So, welcome everyone. Hardy New Englanders, but there was no snowstorm. We can go through an inch of snow and slush, but I'm very pleased to be here tonight. I'm Adrienne Teresi, and on behalf of the entire board of the League of Women Voters, we're so happy to see you here as we celebrate our very first League of Women Voters in Celebration of Women event. Our league joins the Global Day of Celebrating Women, and we're recognizing 5 area women for their public as well as their private achievements. And these amazing women have contributed to the advancement and nurturing of their families as well as their communities, and we will hear from them later on. About 30 years ago, on this very day, March 8th, in a piazza in the center of Florence, Italy, near the old bridge, I participated in my very first International Women's Day. Yeah. The piazza began filling with women, carrying signs and slogans, overflowing with women, singing, chanting, and politicking. And it lasted well into the night. I was very impressed. So the following year, having returned to my own women's college campus, faculty and staff held a day-long symposium inviting our area women and our college students for our forums and our educational roundtable discussions, lively roundtable discussions. Now then, you might ask, okay, you like the holiday event, the celebration. However, the League of Women Voters and International Women's Day has a shared history, and it goes like this. Both were born of activism in the early 20th century, a story I think perhaps you know well about the women's suffragette movement. Now, in the European countries, several European countries, women were protesting and rallying for their rights. Across the Atlantic, at that point in time, as we headed to the 19th Amendment to the Constitution for our rights to vote, Carrie Chapman Catt, whose leadership was key for its passage, had also been involved in the international movement. A few years later, she founded the League of Women Voters. And we recently celebrated our 93rd year. The Amherst League is 74 years young. Now a little public service announcement. The League is nonpartisan. We are a political organization that seeks to promote informed participation of all citizens in the political process. We take positions on public policy issues after study and consensus, and then we advocate. Now, you're probably thinking that we just do book sales. Well, we do those. But before I talk about book sales, we are probably most visible in Amherst because of our voter registration drives. In fact, earlier today, another drive was held in the Jones Library. But we do have our annual events, such as the book sale. And by the way, it's coming up May 3rd to 5th, so start cleaning out your bookshelves. Read our newsletter so you know, or go to our website so you'll know when to start bringing us your books. We also have monthly programs on topical and socially relevant issues. Last fall, for instance, we did a voter suppression program, and upcoming is a panel on immigration reform. And we will also be examining homelessness on a local and regional level. Now, our annual Amherst Candidates Night is coming up on March 27th, and I wanted to get that in. But also, we're currently engaged with the State League of Women Voters, compiling questions and a voter's guide so that we can compare as voters the positions of the 5 candidates running for U.S. Senator in the April 30th primaries. Our membership is from up and down the valley. We're also the largest of the 40 local leagues, and we're among the most active. Now, Cherry Catman Cat, say that a few times fast. In 1920, on the eve of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, called our right to vote, and I quote, an emblem of women's equality. So have we come a long way? Well, yes, if you're of a certain generation, such as mine, that witnessed a seismic shift from the 1970s that took us away from the kitchen sink and to a seat at practically every table. All's not rosy. We know that. We've yet to gain economic parity. Women still earn 77 cents to every male dollar. And we've just witnessed the jaw-dropping battle over the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. We've challenges, many of them. And in fact, some would say challenge is too gentle a word. But it looks as if sometimes a sledgehammer is being taken against our constitutional rights. And it's an assault on women's rights, and now raging in Arkansas. But there's hope, and we do look for hope. And certainly the political gains of the past fall to advance the social change needed for a more equitable society might be out there. Seated in the 113th Congress this year, we have 81 women in the House.
Now I'm going to clap.
Thank you. Thank you. 20 women senators. 6 of whom come from states that never had women senators, including our very own state. Including our very own state. Now, if I can find my notes and move us along. Now, it's I think, clear to us from those fall elections, Congress is beginning to look a little bit more like the people it represents, both in number and gender. Then, too, we have 3 associate women Supreme Court justices. But I look ahead when a she is Chief Justice and when a she is President. Closer to home, we have our state senator, our state representative. Our state representative, Ellen Story. Ellen doesn't need an introduction, but I will. A short one. Ellen is one of less than 25% of women representatives. 25%. She's only one of 4 to hold leadership positions and was recently reappointed last month. Now, some of our elected political leaders need to catch up to constituents. Not Ellen. She writes and supports some of the most important bills advocating women's issues and protecting our medical and mental health rights. There's a lot more. But Ellen, I always enjoy seeing you at the many community events when you're away from the State House. I don't know how you fit them all in. But I have one for me that's perhaps most significant. And it was last summer when you were leading a protest, a demonstration against a sitting senator's voting record for women's rights. Please join me in welcoming our state representative, Ellen Story.
Adrian mentioned the candidate Candidates Night. 20 years ago, the League had its Candidates Night when I was a brand new candidate, never having thought about running for office. And I was scared to death. It was in the junior high, the middle school auditorium. And there were a lot of us running. And I was so scared. I remember I had on a yellow suit to give me confidence. And Cammie Elbow was the moderator, and she was very good. I hadn't thought about that until you mentioned that. And one of the things the League does that is just supremely important is voter registration. When John Kerry was running for president, I read somewhere that there's a cohort of women that just don't vote, you know, from 24 to 40 or something. They just didn't vote. And so I made it my personal mission to talk to every woman that I met in that category, whether it was a cashier at Stop and Shop or a woman at CVS or my dental hygienist. And I asked my dental hygienist, "Are you registered to vote?" And she said, I later turned out to be sorry because she was a Republican. But she said, I said, "Are you registered to vote?" And she said, "Yes, but my husband isn't." She lived in Whately. And I just told him it's important for him to register to vote. And he should do it this time. And her husband said to her, "Do you have to take a test?" Yes. In Whately.
Is that true?
And I said, you know, she said, "No, you don't have to take a test." But when I was growing up in Texas, you had to pay a poll tax. I think it was $1.75, which was a lot more then than it is now, but it still was not prohibitive for most people. But it did prohibit exactly who it was meant to prohibit, which was poor people. And if I had gone to vote, I would not have had to take a test. But if I had been Mexican or African American, I would have been given a test. And there would have been hard questions on it. Name all the Supreme Court justices. When was the Louisiana Purchase? Whatever questions the people registering voters wanted to ask you. So that's in my lifetime and in many of your lifetimes. So that's the first thing I say to people when I try to get, it's free. And you don't have to take a test. No one's going to ask you that. And ask you anything. And the League has done just a wonderful job, sitting out on the common and making it easy for people to register, being at UMass, making it easy. You talked a little bit about the 2012 election. I'm going to talk a little bit about that also. I realize the League is nonpartisan, but I am going to talk a little bit about Democrats and the strengths of the Democrats and some of the weaknesses of the Republicans. In this vote, the Democrats managed to get more minorities out to vote than had ever happened before. Native Americans, Hispanics, African Americans, and also college students. And this Congress has had the greatest increase in women since 1992. 1992 was when I was elected, and that was called the Year of the Woman, because the women in the Senate doubled from 2 to 4. And the reason that they did, my timing turned out to have been very good in my election because it was during the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill hearings. And everybody was watching on their TVs the first case of sexual harassment that had really reached that kind of public level. And this was in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, which had not one woman on the committee. So people started thinking for the first time, you know, it might be a good idea to have more women in office. So that's why the women senators doubled. Women and minorities' political rise are really on intersecting tracks. And Republicans need to take note of this, or our two-party system is going to be in jeopardy. I think they are trying to take notice of this, but they haven't enough yet. There were pre-election polls and research. People were asked, do you think it would be a positive thing to have more women in Congress? 59% of African Americans said yes, it would. 62% of Latinos said yes. 44% of whites said yes. Less than 50% of white people said it'd be a good idea to have more women. For people under 30, it was 54%, which is better than it might be. So getting college students to vote, you know, they are more likely to vote for a woman. Among all voters, 47% said they cared deeply about having more women in leadership. Even 71% of female Republicans said Congress would function better if there were more women there. It's not just any woman. The party and the abilities of the woman and the issues that she stands for matters. It was interesting to watch this fall when people came out in droves to defeat the party of Todd Akin and Richard Murdoch after those things that they said about rape, which the vast majority of people were repulsed by. They both lost their election. When women are in office, they sponsor more legislation and they attract more co-sponsors and more support for their districts. Women tend to play together better than men do. There's a former U.S. ambassador named Swanee Hunt, who's currently the Eleanor Roosevelt Lecturer in Public Policy at the Harvard Kennedy School. And she says she has worked for decades with women internationally in war-torn countries. And it's the mothers that, you know, reach across these battlefields, you know, strewn with the bodies of their sons, to the mothers of the enemy to try to get reconciliation. It's women who do that much better than men do. And Susan Collins, who's the Republican senator from Maine, said, if women were in charge, this was a few months ago, she said, if women were in charge of the Senate, we would have a budget deal by now. With all deference to our male colleagues, women's styles tend to be more collaborative. And we know that just because you're a woman doesn't mean you're wonderful. I mean, there's Margaret Thatcher, Phyllis Schlafly. I mean, you know, you can list exceptions to the rule. Women are 40%, this is very different than it was 30 years ago, 40% of full-time workers in management. And they get paid, your 77 cents was the highest that I've heard. They get paid 73% of what their male colleagues get. Isn't that just extraordinary in 2010? 2013. One of the things the Caucus of Women Legislators is going to do this year is to try to pass a comparable worth bill. If any of you know business owners who would say publicly, you know, it would never occur to me to pay a woman that works for me differently than a man who's doing the same job. Try to, you know, I'm trying to get some public, because this is going to be a battle. So if you can think of people who could say, you know, in my business, I have always paid someone who's doing the same work the same as someone else who's doing the same work. Because that's not the typical case, you know, as astonishing as that is. Did any of you hear Lily Ledbetter when she was here recently? She was a woman in Alabama who worked for, where did she work?
Goodyear Tire.
Goodyear Tire in Alabama. She worked there for years and years and years and was a very good worker. And then after she'd been there for years, she discovered that she was making significantly less than a man who was doing exactly the same job that she was. So she went home and she talked to her husband about this. And, you know, this is not fair. And they decided that they would actually challenge this. And so she took them to court. And the case, and this took years, and the case eventually got to the Supreme Court of the United States. And she lost. And the Supreme Court said, you waited too long to file your complaint. You should have done this as soon as you were hired, or at least in the first year, when of course she didn't know that she was not getting paid the same thing. She, after all this work and sacrifice that she'd done, she lost. And then the first bill that President Obama signed when he became president was the Lilly Ledbetter Act, saying, you know, that it has to be fair. But she is this tough, I saw her at the Democratic National Convention in Charlotte. I didn't see, she was at Mount Holyoke, right? I didn't see her, I was in Boston recently. But she's this tough little wiry, bleach blonde woman who just, you know, rose to the occasion and eventually won. But the Supreme Court did not help. In professions where there are more women than men, as the percentage of women gets higher, the salary levels go down. And that's true for primary school teachers and for social workers. And in some places, I think that's true in politics also. When it's not, when you don't have quite the amount of power, or you're not paid as much as you want to, and men don't think it's worth running for office, then more women run and win. In terms of how many women we have in government, where do you think we rank in terms of countries in the world? I'll tell you what's number one. The first is Rwanda. They have 56% of their legislators are women. We rank 77th. Everybody is ahead of us. Everybody is ahead of us. We've just gotten higher than we ever had before. We have 18.6% of women are in Washington, in Congress. Now this is a little depressing. A few years ago, I just was saying nice things about college-age students, but this is a little depressing. Cornell University concocted an experiment. They had fake resumes, and they were exactly the same in every way except for the parental status. Did you see this? And so the college students were asked to evaluate the fitness of candidates for employment or for promotion. And mothers were much less likely to be hired. These are college students doing this. These are not, you know, old, grumpy men. And if they were hired, they were offered on average $11,000 less than a male fictional candidate. Isn't that stunning? And they were much less likely by these college students to be judged worthy of a promotion. I don't know what that says, but I don't like it. Since I have been in Boston, they have put a woman's bathroom near the chamber. It used to be, when the first women were there, the chamber is on the 3rd floor. They had to go down to the basement to the public bathroom. And roll calls sometimes come pretty fast, and so you would really have to hustle. And the bathroom was in the other building. You had to go a long way to get to the bathroom. While I was there, in about the first 3 years when I was there, and there always has been a men's bathroom and shower right outside of the chamber. So during the time that I've been there, and I've showed this to some of you, they put in a women's bathroom, and Charlie Flaherty from Cambridge was the Speaker of the House then, and we had a photo op. And thick pink ribbon had been cut. And what do you think the color of the tiles are in the bathroom? And of course they're pink. And it does have a little shower. But that happened in about 1995. There was a veteran woman who was one of the first women there. I would really not have liked to be one of the first women. The court officers, I mean, there still are some court officers who've been there since 1958, and they think things were just better before there were so many women around. But this woman came in, and this was long before I got there. The legislature, during the budget, would go all night. And so people would get tired. Go all night, you know, every night for a week or so. I mean, you'd have a little time to sleep in the morning, and then you'd be back at it. And there's a members' lounge in the House lobby, which is only for House members. It's where the bathrooms are. And it was, 3 in the morning, and she was tired. And so she opened the door of the members' lounge. The lights were out, and came in. And when she came in, light came in, and one of the men said, "You can't come in here. There are men sleeping. There's sofas, comfortable chairs." And she said, "Well, I've certainly seen a sleeping man. And I am. Of course I'm coming in." And she did, and found a little place where she could sleep. I think if that had happened when I first got there, I would not have done that. I think I would have said, "Oh, excuse me," and shut the door. I wouldn't do that now, but I think I might have. And another thing that has, the Massachusetts legislature, is the oldest really in the world. I mean, it started in 1630. But if you count the legislators from 1923 to the present, there have been over 20,000 men who have served in the Massachusetts legislature. And there have been 182 women. We do have a major feat, is we do have a woman president of the Senate. And that is just extraordinary. Teresa Murray is her name. And She's from a working class family, and she's tough. I think there are 5 girls in her family. 2 of her sisters are nuns, and she is pro-choice, pro-stem cell research, and pro-same-sex marriage. All of those issues are things that the hierarchy of the church absolutely opposes. So it's wonderful that we have a woman senator. And there are getting to be more of us, and we're different enough so that we can't be stereotyped. We don't agree on anything. Really. Anything. Not even domestic violence. I mean, she must have done something to deserve it. No one would say that out loud now. They may still think that. Someone did say that in the first years when I was there. A woman legislator said that. They wouldn't say it out loud. But we're quite a mixed group, and we need more. It's I'm not going to do this job till I'm 90. So people need to start thinking about who might like to run. It's a fabulous job for some people. Some people would hate it. I mean, you have to suffer fools pretty gladly. And you have to, I turned 50 when I ran, while I was running. If I'd run when I was 30, I would have been mad all the time. And you can't do that. You would be totally ineffective if you were mad all the time. You have to be able to just let things roll off you and not talk to people that you disagree with on the most important things. You just don't talk about those things. And then tomorrow there'll be an issue that you do agree on. And you talk about that. But I would highly, highly recommend it. And the League, of course, is a good way to start finding recruits. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. With you, I think the gender agenda is indeed gaining momentum. May I also speak without the microphone?
Yes.
Yes. You don't need it, and I don't think it's bothersome. Well, now the reason why we are having this event this evening, I explained the sort of symbiotic relationship between International Women's Day and the League of Women Voters. But our league has chosen to recognize this day by recognizing some amazing women that we have right in front of us. They come from a diversity of backgrounds and experiences. They're all non-league members.
That was necessary,
That
right?
was very necessary.
Right, that was what do you call it?
Yeah.
Requirement. Right.
But they were nominated, however, by league members. So they may not have been publicly acknowledged or received awards until tonight. So what I'd like to do now is to mention them by name and then allow them to have a voice for themselves. Each of them will then come up and share a few remarks with us. So to my right, the first is Julie Cumble, Marianne Grimm, Tracy Levy, Julie Phillips, and Lynn Phillips. My apologies. Lynn Phillips, that's why I want you to speak for yourself. And Susan Wade. So.
and thank you to my nominator, Bonnie McCracken, and to the selection committee for believing all the nice things she said about me. And to the staff from the Women's Fund of Western Massachusetts, where I work, and some of the members of the Leadership Institute for Political and Public Impact, which I have the privilege to run, and to my husband, Bruce Watson, and son, Nate Watson. Thank you for that. You know, it's pretty overwhelming to be in an historic building like this, the Amherst Women's Club. It's not an old boys club. It's the Women's Club. And to be part of that means a lot to me. You know, I think about the women who have been here before us, having tea, making food for people who needed food, who maybe were ill, or celebrating the town, building connection in this town that I've been part of for 20, Bruce, how long has it been? More than 20 years, 22 years or so. And so to be considered, you know, to be in that line of women is really pretty remarkable to me. The Women's Fund of Western Massachusetts, where I've been for 6.5 years, had an event here recently honoring 16 elder women, and we're giving them the Standing on Her Shoulders Award on Thursday, next Thursday. I'm sure you know many of them. You can go on our website and find out, but they're remarkable women like Susie Lowenstein. You're going to have to help me out, your staff. Ruth Hook, Laura Peterson. From the 4 counties of Western Massachusetts, women whose stories you might not hear about in mainstream press, but who are real groundbreakers and trailblazers. And we honor them right here with a tea, and they will be on a big fancy stage at the Mass Mutual Center in Springfield, which is a big deal for them and for us on Thursday, so I hope you can join us. And then, you know, you mentioned that you were 50 when you ran for office. Well, in December, I was 50, and I decided to have a big party right here in this space because it means a lot to me. And I was dancing right over there and eating cake in that room. And, you know, it wasn't an accident. So I did my part then. So imagine my surprise to be called here to take my place in line with these women. And you know, we joke about the Leadership Institute for Political and Public Impact, where we train women to run for political office, and get in the pipeline, or to be on boards of directors. And our acronym is LIPPY. We want women to get lippy, to speak up. So when I think of taking my place, I think of taking my place in the biggest sense. And so, you know, I take this responsibility very seriously, and this award with deep gratitude, and I will keep working hard and keep dancing while I'm doing it. So, thank you very much.
Yeah, I have my little note cards to fill in where perhaps there's been humbleness on part of our honorees. I'll do this with each of you. And I will quote, because Julie has indeed been in a very important position in preparing women for leadership in political and executive and social administrative roles, Julie, so we thank you for that. But I quote from her nominator's form. Julie's impact is in the number of women who have gone on to serve as members of school committees, boards, and executive leadership. And there's someone serving as a city clerk and as a select woman. Congratulations to you. Yeah. Mary Ann Grimm, may we ask you to come on up.
Thank you, Adrian, and everyone. Good evening. I feel so honored to be here. This is such an unexpected honor. I received a phone call a couple of weeks ago from the woman who nominated me, who's Jan Crosby Weiss. This is Elaine, who's substituting for Jan. Jan's out of town today, but she called to tell me that what she had done in nominating me, and that I had been chosen. I was just absolutely floored. So I believe she, we'll find out from the note cards later what she had said. But I've long been on boards of directors and treasurer for many organizations. And the model for that was my dad. My dad was on boards of directors, many organizations. He did a little bit differently than me. He was a serial board. He was a serial board of director. He would be on one board, and he'd rise to the presidency, and then he'd move on to the next board. And I've never learned the knack of going from one to the other. I sort of have a disease called no-itis. I don't know how to say no. So the first board of directors that I joined was in the Amherst Day School, which is also known as Little Mid Schoolhouse. And I tend to go on the boards of organizations that are important to me. And all three of my kids went to the Little Mid Schoolhouse, and they've been providing fine preschool education for 75 years to the kids of Amherst and surrounding towns. So I've been treasurer of their board for 29 years. I'm still treasurer. So my oldest child is 34. And I've been treasurer since she was at Little Mid Schoolhouse. And I should say, this is my son Andy. He went to Little Red. My daughter was going to come, but they had 18 inches of snow today, so she couldn't make it. But Little Red's been it's been a gem in the Valley for 75 years. I've also served as treasurer for the Amherst Education Foundation, which I finally figured out how to get off of a board. It took me 2 years to get off, but I finally handed off the treasurer's role a few years ago. But they have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for our schools, for the four towns, the four regional schools, the Amherst, Pelham, Leavenworth, Shutesbury. And they just have been a wonderful organization and have provided opportunities for kids that would not normally have the opportunities because of the money that they've raised. I then I joined this group. No, I guess the next one was Northeast Rottweiler Rescue. A friend of mine was forming this group, and so I was one of the founding board members, and this is a group that's been around for about 15 years or so. It's not really based in Amherst, it's based around New England. And I love Rottweilers, and so there was a need. And this has been a wonderful organization who has found homes for Rottweilers who needed to be adopted, needed to be rescued. And we're called Northeast Rottweiler Rescue and Referral because we refer people. We also offer help for money for spay, and we help raise money so that people who can't afford to get care for their dog, that we will give them money to get the care so that dog won't need to be rescued. And I got to put in a plug for Rottweilers. They really get along right. Rottweilers are great dogs. It's the owners sometimes who aren't so great, but the Rottweilers are great. I call them the clowns of the dog world. So Rottweilers are great. So then I thought maybe I would try joining an organization where I would do something other than be on the board. And so I joined Makela, the Jewish Chorus of Western Massachusetts, as a singer. And I went to rehearsals and I said, I'm just going to sing. I'm not going to be on the board. I'm just going to sing and let somebody else do the work. But when organizations are important to me, I can't do that. And so they were looking for a treasurer. And I said, okay, nobody else wanted to do it. And I've been treasurer for so many organizations that really it's gotten to be almost a piece of cake. I have a system, the organizations are different, but money is money. You pay the bills, you bring the money in. So I became treasurer. I'm not singing anymore, but I became treasurer. I've been treasurer there for a number of years. It's important. I feel like that it's important for us to give to these nonprofit organizations, because without them, there's so much that would not get done. And it seems like such a priority that if people don't step up to be on the boards and to help direct these organizations, there is, I mean, this is just a sample of some of the things that the organizations that I have been on boards of, things that they have done. And without nonprofit organizations, there is so much that just would not get done. So I just, all my life, my dad was the model for this, and he always thought it was important. And I enjoy it. I enjoy being the treasurer, but I also think it's an important role that we all should volunteer, even if it's a few hours a year, somewhere, because volunteerism is really important. So I couldn't conclude tonight without introducing my granddaughter. Ruby Starr. You want to stand up and say hi to everybody? So this is my granddaughter, whom I'm raising. I've raised her exclusively since she was 2, but she's been living in my house since the day I was at her birth, and she's been in my house since the day she was born. And I call her my Sancho Panza. She comes with me everywhere. She's been going to board meetings since she was a few months old. And she comes with me everywhere, and she's just a really important part of my life. So thank you so much. Congratulations to my fellow honorees. Thank you so much for this honor.
Women voters, we are honored to have you as one of our recipients, Mary Graham.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
To quote, I think we've seen this, but Mary Ann is a remarkable woman. If asked to undertake an activity, she typically jumps in with both feet, willingly giving of her time. Thank you. All right, next we have Tracy Levy, who will speak in her own voice. Please come on up, Tracy.
So thank you, League of Women Voters. It's a true honor to be recognized by an organization I have a lot of respect for. I mean, it's a league of, you grow up as a woman in any sort of small town in the country, I hope, and you hear about the League of Women Voters. And then as you grow older, you hear what they're doing, and you get more and more impressed, and certainly as an adult, reading, looking before every election for what the League of Women Voters debates are, when they're going to be, and if I can't make them, then the articles after the debates. I mean, the role that you play in every community is crucial, and thank you, and I'm very honored to be recognized by you. And I'm also knowing several people who have been involved in this organization, because I'm the program director at the Amherst Survival Center, and it is an incredible honor to be able to work at an organization that I can't even tell you how much I love my job and the organization. And part of the reason why I love the organization so much is it really is about community. And the way I describe the Amherst Survival Center is, it doesn't matter how you start your relationship with the Survival Center. You may be a donor, you may be a volunteer, one of the 175 volunteers we have every week. You may be somebody who comes in initially needing something. You may be lucky, like me, and actually get a job there. But at some point, whatever brought you to the Survival Center doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that you know the Survival Center, that you become part of that community, that whatever that label means just sort of falls away. So we have participants or clients that end up donating. We have volunteers that eat lunch. We have donors that come by and they're like, oh, and now I can volunteer. I mean, whatever it is, whatever the boxes that people might identify themselves with disappear when you walk into our old space, but certainly our new space. So if you haven't been there yet, please come by. So it is quite an honor to be part of an organization that not only I so entirely respect its mission and the kind of work that we all do, but also that I feel like has adopted me through coming into a new community. I live in Northampton, but Amherst is now where my extended family is. I feel like whenever I walk down the street of Amherst, I literally can't go more than 10 steps without knowing somebody. And it doesn't matter if they, once again, came into the Survival Center initially as a donor, or as a volunteer, or as a participant. They are part of my family now. And so Amherst is very much part of my life, and a very important part of my life. I've also been honored for the last 5.5 years to work with Cheryl Zoll, who has been not. I'm going to wait a few months to talk about, maybe more publicly, how much working with her has really meant to me personally and professionally. Working at the Survival Center, as I said before, has been an ideal situation, and part of that has been the opportunity to work with Cheryl on a team that really, I think all of us in this room rarely get an opportunity to work with somebody for 6 months, let alone for 5.5 years, where it's felt easy. It's really been in some ways the easiest part of my job has been working with her. So I'll save all that other stuff for 2.5 months from now. And I also I want to thank, of course, my family and my friends, my young son, who is managing to stay quiet during this whole evening. Thank you. And my husband, who had a work obligation this evening and sort of figured out how to come here anyway. So thank you. So thank you so much for my honor.
Yeah. Tracy, again quoting, has brought her considerable energy, her personal and professional skills and zest to the daily operations of the programs at the Amherst Survival Center. Next, please welcome, I will be very careful with your name.
I'm so bad at names, it's professional. My family can tell you I am terrible with names and faces, so it makes me feel better. Thank you so much to Rebecca Fricka for nominating me and to the League, and I also want to thank my family, my husband, Mark Jackson, and my daughter, Lauren Phillips Jackson, who she's in 8th grade and she wants to be a senator. So she's decided she loves to debate. She cares passionately about social issues, so it sounds like a great situation. I am so very moved to receive this award, and particularly from an organization that plays such a critical role in fostering civic engagement and opening up critical dialogue about issues that are so important in our communities and in the wider world. I'm also very honored to share this evening with Ellen Story, whose work I'm so grateful for, and with my fellow honorees who are doing really valuable and impressive work. My own work, whether it's my teaching at UMass, I teach media and gender and children's culture classes, or whether it's my research and my writing mostly on issues of sexuality and violence against women, or on making a film, which I recently did that was based on my work on sexuality and violence. Across that work, really my goal is to open up conversation about complex social issues and to really press for change. So the work of the League just really resonates with me really deeply. As I said, my main focus is sexuality and women's experiences of violence. And those are issues that are really particularly poignant, of course, for girls and young women, but issues that I think that young men need to be very concerned about, and those of us who are older, who are parents and grandparents raising the next generation, community members, also need to be really concerned about. As you might imagine, I deal with a lot of ugliness in my work. I literally, every morning, I sleep with my laptop under my bed, which is probably not good, but says something about my schedule. But every morning I Google terms like rape culture, sexual violence, campus violence, and things like that to see what's going on in the news. And a lot of it is really very depressing. My family can tell you I grieve about these issues. I don't just study them. They literally do keep me up at night. But I thought that tonight what I'd really like to talk about is areas where I have a lot of hope. Areas recently, actually since the release of this film, it's called Flirting with Danger, was released in October. Areas that have given me great hope is I've had a lot of conversations with people after screenings of the film, after discussions. People will come up to me individually or they'll send me emails wanting to talk about this more, and I've worked a lot with students who are working on these issues. In the last 4 months, this film has been shown in the community at Amherst Cinema, at the high school, thank you, and in various college settings. And so I want to share with you 4 things that are really inspiring for me, that most of which I think I wouldn't have seen, I didn't see even 5 or 10 years ago. And the first is how incredibly eager people are to share their stories and how grateful they are to have spaces to really explore the complexities of their stories. So my work is based on interviews with young women where I ask them to tell me about their experiences. And it's really amazing how many women tell me they've never shared their stories before these interviews, and how important it is that the paradoxes, the complexities, the contradictions and wrinkles in their stories are honored. And I've been very moved to see the power of those stories, how healing sharing those stories is, not just for the women who share them, but for the people who witness them as well through this film and through writing. A second thing that's been really moving to me is talking with very concerned adults about how to raise their children in a rape-prone world and to raise them with integrity. And not just talking with parents of daughters about how to keep them safe, which is something I would have mostly seen, I think, even a few years ago, but talking with parents of sons about how can I raise a conscious, gender-conscious, conscientious and compassionate son in this world. And that's been tremendously inspiring to put out work that is fostering that kind of dialogue among parents. The third thing is how many young men have spoken up in discussions after these screenings or in conversations with me afterward, and not from a place of defensiveness, which is what I used to see much more of. You know, are you saying all men are rapists? Now you're making me feel bad, I don't really want to think of it. I don't hear that. I have not heard that once in numerous screenings. What I hear is courageous young men trying to problematize the way that our culture thinks about masculinity and saying, I really want to grapple with this. I want to think about the privilege that my culture has given me and the messages that my culture has given me that says it's okay to exploit women. I don't want to participate in that. Help me think about ways to make change in my own life, in my own college community. Incredibly inspiring. And the fourth thing is watching high school and college students really standing up and taking action. For years I've taught about issues around gender, exploitation of children, and so forth. And it's easy to teach students things that make them feel outraged, but it's not been easy to help them bridge from outrage to action. So there's sort of a, gosh, this is horrible, but what are you going to do? Or this is horrible, somebody ought to do something. But not that next step. And something has shifted. So I've talked to so many students. There's this new coalition to end rape culture on UMass campus that has been so inspiring. But students are taking action on all kinds of issues, transgender students' rights, the student debt crisis, sustainability issues, a group I'm working with that's looking at global literacy and gender equity issues across all these different issues. And when I think about the action that young people are taking, I'm grateful to those young people for taking those steps, but I'm particularly grateful to the people who came before them, to the people who came before me, to the League, to other feminists and pro-feminist male allies who have been doing this work for so long and setting the stage for these actions that are happening right now. And so as I accept this award, it is with such humility and gratitude, and it is something that will very much be inspiring my work for a very long time to come.
Lynn's film is the kind of promise for social change that I hope I live to see. In quoting, excuse me, her work, her scholarship, as well as the film combined, has the power to transform the way we think about sex and sexual violence. Thank you, Lynn. Susan Waite, you're up next, please. Let us clap for you as well.
My name is Susan Wade, and I'm the recycling coordinator here in the town of Amherst. And I have my little thing written because, as my supervisor, Guilford Mooring, knows, if you get me talking, it's kind of hard to get me to quiet down. So I timed it, and I wanted to say thank you very much, and it's a really great honor to be recognized like this. And first by in this community, because there are so many people who do really outstanding things, and second of all by this organization, because it's filled with a bunch of really smart, strong women who make things happen, and it's really wonderful, so thank you very much. There are a few others with whom I'd like to share this award. The first is my solid waste professional mentors, many of whom who have dedicated their entire careers to waste and recycling, and arguably deserve this award more than I have recently come to this field, so somebody else I'd like to thank and share this award with is the other dedicated Town of Amherst employees who do great things all the time that go unrecognized. And my family and friends who support me emotionally, and let's be honest, financially, so that I can do this kind of work. My husband Todd Tripp is here, and my daughter Izzy is here as well. Waste belongs in that category of topics that people unconsciously avoid talking about, along with funerals. I once took a battery of interest and skill inventories and was told that I would make a really good funeral director. So perhaps I have a gift for forcing people to confront uncomfortable topics. I do believe that waste needs to be faced, and here's why. Each pound of waste that you and I generate represents only a fraction of the waste generated by producing what we've thrown away. We need to consider not just the trash cans in our individual households, but those of industries producing that which we are disposing. The U.S. has evolved into a society reliant on disposable goods and packaging. As a result of a perceived need for convenience and a wealth of organizations that are happy to supply it to us, we now generate about half of the world's waste. Consider how different toy departments in stores are now to when we were growing up. Toys are heavily packaged because it's easier and, due to cheap commodities, more cost-effective than use of other loss prevention methods. Finally, the amount of resources that we use and discard in the United States is not sustainable. North America comprises only 8% of the world population, but we consume 1/3 of the world's resources. The good news is the waste industry is changing. More valuable material is getting pulled out before it is lost in the landfill or the incinerator. For example, composted food waste can become a valuable soil additive, and in 2014, a Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection ban will require organizations producing 1 ton or more of food waste weekly to sort it for composting. People are also starting to demand change and are enforcing bans like that of our expanded polystyrene foam ban of single-use items. And our children, who are realizing the ugly waste legacy of my generation is poised to leave behind, are also demanding change. Probably the best news of all is that manufacturers are changing. Walmart asked its suppliers to reduce packaging by 5% by 2013. And progressive manufacturers are adopting zero waste initiatives on their own in order to reduce waste. Of course, this change is motivated by cost savings and not a deep and profound desire to be sustainable, but we'll take it anyway.
Yes.
My vision for the near future in Amherst is a community with curbside pickup of 3 types of household waste: recyclable material, compostable material, and that which falls into neither of these categories. This would be the smallest bin of them all.
periodic collection days for other non-recyclable material which isn't collected already by manufacturers. In the state of Oregon, the paint manufacturers actually banded together and they collect unwanted paint and unused paint. So that's kind of a trend in the future that is really great, so that municipalities like Amherst don't have to pay to collect it. And then finally, education about and enforcement of the process, and a funding structure that makes it possible to do a good job of it all. That's my vision. I hope to continue to working to make this vision a reality, and thank you for giving me this award, because it's kind of a psychological protein smoothie that comes along. And I'm going to use that energy from this to keep fighting the good fight. I also want to thank Martha Hanna for nominating me. That was really great. Thank you.
I will read, however. Susan's contributions to the community extend far beyond her part-time position as Amherst Recycling Coordinator. She puts in more than her part-time share of the paycheck at the end of the month, and for that we're extremely grateful too. Her enthusiasm and knowledge infuse all her work, and we got a good view of that tonight. I told you that we had amazing women. And yes, from diverse backgrounds, experiences, life experiences, home and personal experiences. But I think you would agree with me that what we see shared here is that deep, abiding, and genuine commitment and actual love of what each of you does. You are all truly wonderful. I am humbled by you. We congratulate you, I do, on behalf of everyone here. And I would like to also say that we'd like to welcome you to membership in the League. With that certificate indeed does come membership to the League of Women Voters. So you will enrich us, I know. Thank you so much. A special thanks to you, Ellen, and I'll forgive you for the grammatic correction. I am an English major. And thank you to all of you. You're all supporters of these wonderful women, and certainly your support is of what I feel in this room, what the League really does stand and work very hard for. And in fact, I hope you continue to support us in the work to advance the potential, the promise, as well as the future opportunities for women, little Ruby, in this room and others, to ensure a more just and equitable society for all. So thank you all very much. Before I say goodbye, thanks to Amherst Media for taking I look forward to rebroadcasts of the family from near and far. Who weren't able to come and view it over and over. And one last comment, please be sure to check out our wonderful League website. It is, I won't say the 3 W's, lwvamherst.org. Check us out. Thank you. Good night.